The fluorescent lights of Biology 101 were hardly romantic, but that's where I saw her, Jennifer. She wasn't the bombshell type. A quiet girl with a kind smile and notes as meticulous as my own. We ended up lab partners, dissecting frogs and fumbling with chemical equations. Turns out, she had dreams of becoming a nurse, putting herself through community college one grueling shift at a time. My world was simpler. I liked fixing things, the greasy satisfaction of making a broken engine purr again. A steady paycheck as a mechanic was all I aimed for. Nothing glamorous, but honest work enough to keep those bills paid on time. Something my dad always drilled into me. Our wedding matched our lifestyle. Courthouse vows followed by cheap pizza with a few friends from the garage. Jennifer beamed even without the fancy dress. We weren't rich, but hey, we were in love, right? That starter home a year later felt like winning the lottery. Sure, it was a fixer-upper in a suburb so boring the beige paint could make you yawn. But it was ours. Weekends became a whirlwind of spackling, hammering, and trying not to electrocute myself rewiring that ancient fuse box. It wasn't glamorous, but we were building something together. The first cracks were subtle. Jennifer always talked about a big family, filling that house with kids. But then the excuses came. We need to be more stable financially first, she'd say. Meanwhile, I was burning the midnight oil at the garage, taking any extra shift I could get. We needed the cash, and honestly, I didn't mind working hard. Sometimes, when those extra shifts turned into all-nighters, she'd go out. Girls' night with the other nurses was all she said, and I just waved, exhausted but figuring she deserved a break after those tough ICU rotations. Sure, a little part of me felt a twinge of loneliness, but I brushed it aside. We were an ordinary couple, facing ordinary struggles. Everything was fine, wasn't it? Home used to be a sanctuary, even with its half-painted walls and perpetually leaky faucet. But lately it felt off. Jennifer, she seemed different. No spark in her smile, always glued to that damn phone. Evenings that used to be filled with mindless TV chatter now stretched into silence. Each of us trapped in our own worlds. Then came the hotel receipt. Not for a dingy motel where maybe a work conference was held, but one of those swanky downtown joints with cocktails that cost more than my toolbox. When I confronted her, Jennifer laughed it off. Silly mix-up. The girls treated me after a long week. Something in my gut clenched. Was I going crazy? The doubts gnawed at me. It wasn't just the receipt. It was the way her perfectly laundered scrubs started smelling of unfamiliar cologne. Or how she'd fumble for excuses when a stray text flashed on her screen late at night. I'd see those messages, brief fragments after she fell asleep, my heart pounding. Nothing overtly incriminating, yet those deleted threads spoke volumes. The promotion should have been good news. Jennifer beaming, talking about a big raise and the chance to move up in the hospital. Only, the excitement in her eyes felt forced, and her new schedule, it was all over the place, late nights, early mornings, even weekends called in at some vague emergency. Every rational part of my brain was screaming that I was turning into an obsessive, jealous lunatic. But the mechanic in me, the guy used to diagnosing problems, he couldn't shake the feeling that some vital engine part was about to give out spectacularly. Driven by a mix of fear and desperation, I did the unthinkable. I slipped a tracker app onto her phone. Low, dirty, I know, but the alternative, this gnawing uncertainty, was eating me alive. The first lie unraveled on a Tuesday. Her shift was supposed to end at 10 p.m. At 11:30, that little dot on the tracker app wasn't moving from the hospital parking lot. It was blinking at an address I didn't recognize. A quiet street lined with mansions, not the kind of neighborhood a working nurse frequented. I sat there, staring at the screen, the world tilting on its axis. It started simple enough. Honey, Jennifer cooed one day, that nervous excitement in her eyes again. Let's make up for that courthouse thing with a real wedding party to celebrate us. I'd always been the practical one, and the idea of blowing money we didn't have on a fancy dress and flowers felt absurd. But she'd been so distant lately. Maybe this was how I could fix things. Show her I cared. So, like a fool, I agreed. Then came the complications. Venues, caterers, a guest list full of people I barely knew. Suddenly, my simple life was overrun with satin swatches and seating charts. The worst of it was Brad, a high school sweetheart of Jennifer's, now a smooth-talking lawyer who'd conveniently offered to help with some of the legal paperwork for the wedding. The guy oozed arrogance and expensive cologne, like a walking reminder of everything I wasn't. I'd catch them, Jennifer and Brad, huddled over paperwork and giggling. Just old friends, she'd say, but I wasn't blind. The way he looked at her, the casual way he touched her arm, it sent a white-hot surge of jealousy through me. Everyone dismissed it. You're being paranoid. They'd insist he's just trying to help. But deep down, the mechanic in me sensed something was dangerously off-kilter. The night before the wedding, sleep was impossible. It wasn't just nerves. A bone-deep dread had taken hold. A voice in my head screaming that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Walking down the aisle felt like I was marching to my own execution. Everything was a blur. The cheesy music, the polite smiles, Jennifer's face painted with that false cheer that had become so familiar. The reception was worse. Every forced laugh, every clink of champagne glasses felt like nails hammered into a coffin. I couldn't even bring myself to meet Jennifer's eyes during our first dance. All I wanted was escape. Just need some air, I mumbled, slipping away from the crowd. My feet blindly led me down a dimly lit hallway, away from the noise. And then I heard it, her voice, a soft giggle that pierced me like a bullet. It was coming from a half-open door. My stomach dropped, my hands started shaking. I didn't want to know what was on the other side of that door, but some self-destructive force compelled me forward. My hand on the doorknob felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Every fiber of my being wanted to turn away, pretend this nightmare wasn't real. But I couldn't. Slowly, the door creaked open, and the sight that pierced my soul will forever be seared into my memory. There they were, Jennifer, my wife, locked in an embrace so passionate it stole the breath from my lungs. And Brad, the slick lawyer, his hands roaming where mine should have been. A primal scream tore from my throat, a mix of fury, anguish, and the shattering of everything I believed in. The next few minutes unravel in a chaotic blur. I remember Brad's feeble attempts at excuses, his designer suit no match for my mechanic's rage. I remember Jennifer's tears, a pathetic display compared to the years of lies spinning in my head. There may have been shouting, accusations, it was lost in a red haze. The scene at the reception descended into pandemonium. The music choked off mid-song, replaced by a chorus of gasps and whispers. Jennifer's family, those who'd always treated me like one of their own, looked ready to murder me, to murder her. I couldn't tell. Everything good and decent I'd held onto in the world crumbled. Without a word, without even a glance at the wreckage I'd caused, I turned and walked out of that brightly decorated room. Each step away from my sham of a wedding felt like shedding a dead weight. The drive home was pure autopilot, the roads blurring, reflecting the chaos in my mind. Our house, usually a refuge, now felt like a tomb. Every painted wall, every repaired fixture, seemed to mock me. It wasn't sadness I felt in that empty house, but a cold, searing rage. Years of honest work, dreams built brick by brick, had been nothing more than a foundation for her betrayal. I couldn't sleep. I paced, images of them together, a tortuous loop in my brain, fueling the fire inside. Morning came, not with despair, but with a terrifying clarity. This wasn't going to be a story of a heartbroken husband drowning his sorrows. Betrayal of this magnitude demanded a different response. Jennifer wanted a party. I'd give her a goddamn war. In the days following the wedding debacle, I became a machine. The fiery rage cooled, replaced by a chilling focus. Gone was the ordinary mechanic, in his place, a meticulous strategist. Every action was deliberate, calculated to inflict maximum damage with no trail back to me. First came the evidence. The tracker app wasn't just heartbreak confirmation anymore. It was data, mapping Jennifer's lies. Months of texts I'd been too scared to read were printed, each flirty message a nail in her coffin. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, it was all meticulously organized. A timeline of the affair laid bare. My next move was finding the right weapon. No run-of-the-mill divorce lawyer would do. I needed a shark, someone known for tearing wealthy spouses to shreds. His name was Stein, and his office had the predatory feel of a Wall Street trading floor. The smirk he gave when I laid out my evidence was almost as satisfying as the original discovery of the betrayal. The sting came a week after the wedding disaster. Jennifer returned home one evening, probably expecting tearful confrontations or drunken accusations. Instead, she found a manila envelope on the kitchen table. Inside were the divorce papers, and beneath them, the irrefutable proof of her affair. The mask slipped. Gone was the sweet, apologetic wife act. Her eyes flashed first with shock, then fury, and finally, a desperate, pleading fear. "We can work this out," she stammered. "It was a stupid mistake." Her words were empty music to my ears. Too little and far too late. Stein, true to his reputation, went for the jugular. The house, a symbol of both our dreams and her lies, was the first to fall. Her savings accounts were drained. Even that untouchable retirement fund she loved to brag about wasn't safe. By the time the dust settled, Jennifer was financially ruined. But material loss was just the appetizer. With carefully timed ticks, the gossip mill churned into overdrive. Her carefully cultivated image of the sweet, dedicated nurse shattered. Co-workers turned their backs. Old friends sent scathing texts filled with disgust. Jennifer, used to attention and admiration, now found only judgment and scorn at every turn. Revenge, I discovered, was a dish best served ice cold. Watching her world crumble from afar was a dark, twisted kind of satisfaction. The whispers started quickly. "Did you hear about his wife? And what he did to her?" At the garage, there was a mix of grim approval and a strange kind of pity in the guy's eyes. Some slapped me on the back, calling me a hero for not taking betrayal lying down. Others avoided my gaze, discomfort etched on their faces. The victory I'd so meticulously planned felt hollow. Yeah, Jennifer was broke and humiliated, but I was no better off. The inferno of rage had burned out, leaving behind a desolate emptiness. Sleep turned into an enemy, filled with nightmares not of her, but of the monster I'd become in my quest for revenge. Nights became a blur of cheap whiskey and stale regrets. The bottle didn't drown out the sadness. I didn't feel sad exactly, more like a ghost haunting my own life. It was the memories that were relentless. The laughter while fixing a leaky pipe, her head on my shoulder watching some dumb movie. Had it all been a lie? Or was this monster always lurking inside me? My downfall happened in slow motion. Deadlines blown at the garage, parts ordered wrong, tools left where they shouldn't be. The boss, who'd always had a soft spot for me, gave me the talk. I couldn't even muster up the energy to care. He mentioned mandatory leave, maybe getting some counseling. His words washed over me. The old crew drifted away. Invites to drinks after work stopped coming. Who wants to hang out with a half-drunk, volatile mess like me? Evenings stretched into an endless void, the silence of my empty house deafening. Then Jennifer struck back. Suddenly, her social media was ablaze with tearful posts, painting me as the villain, the controlling husband, the one with anger issues. Her lies were laced with just enough truth to be believable. Friends I considered my own started sending concern texts, or worse, just didn't reach out at all. It all culminated with the lawsuit. Harassment, she claimed. Restraining order requested. Stein, my legal shark, looked unusually pale. "This isn't like a divorce," he sputtered. "These allegations, if they stick." He didn't have to finish the sentence. My carefully constructed revenge was about to blow up spectacularly in my own face. The garage was the first domino to fall. The lawsuit, even with its flimsy basis, was enough. Word spread like wildfire. I was a liability, letting you go for your own good. The boss mumbled, avoiding my eyes. The years of loyalty meant nothing against the specter of scandal. With no income, my savings vanished with terrifying speed. Stein, the divorce shark, morphed into a leech, draining the last of my resources with his hourly rates and grim updates on the harassment case. It was a losing battle, and we both knew it. The house, our broken dream, became a final humiliation. We never had a chance to sell it properly. The bank foreclosed. I watched strangers sift through our belongings at a humiliating estate sale. Every piece of furniture sold was another weight off my shoulders, and another nail in my proverbial coffin. The dingy studio apartment I found on the wrong side of town wasn't a home, it was a holding cell. Gone was the cold strategist, replaced by a man fueled by desperation and a dwindling bottle of whiskey. The revenge that once propelled me forward now felt like a sick joke. Loneliness gnawed at me, a beast far worse than anger ever was. Then came the final blow. A rainy Tuesday, a trek to the grocery store for something resembling food, and there they were. Brad, sleek and untouchable in his tailored suit, and Jennifer, no longer the broken woman I'd left behind. She was laughing, radiant, the image of carefree wealth I'd strived and failed to provide. Something inside me snapped. This wasn't just heartbreak anymore. It was the crushing awareness of my own insignificance. I stormed towards them, a pathetic, disheveled figure against their picture-perfect world. Words spewed from my mouth, accusations, threats, all fueled by liquor and the desperation of a drowning man. The shocked faces of restaurant patrons turned accusatory. Security rushed in, and I was dragged out, shouting obscenities until my voice gave out. Local news ran the story with glee. Unhinged mechanic disrupts upscale eatery. There was grainy security footage, and Jennifer's tearful interview condemning my violent outbursts. Any shred of sympathy I might have had vanished. I was no longer the wronged husband, but the pathetic villain of this tale. Rock bottom isn't just a place, it's a state of being. It's staring at your reflection in a cracked mirror, seeing a stranger fueled by cheap booze and cheaper rage. It's realizing the revenge you sought destroyed you far more than its intended target. In the end, there are no true winners. Jennifer, though back on her feet financially, carries the scars of the public scandal. Her once bright career is stalled. Former friends whisper behind her back. She may have money now, but genuine respect and trust will be hard to come by. As for me, broken is too kind a word. I'm a shell, scraping by with odd jobs that barely pay the rent. The garage crew avoids me on the street. I'm the town pariah, whispered about with a mix of disgust and morbid fascination. The bitterness lingers, a constant reminder of my own ruin. Some nights, the questions circle my mind like vultures. Was I blind from the start? Or did my rage transform a flawed but decent woman into a monster? Could any of this have been prevented? Or was this path set in stone from the moment I met her in Biology 101? When the whiskey haze clears, the most terrifying question surfaces. Am I the true villain of this story? The memories of better days are both a balm and a poison. I replay moments of laughter and shared dreams, searching in vain for the exact moment it all went rotten. Where did the sweet, hard-working girl from class disappear to? And how did I not see the serpent lurking beneath the smile? Eventually, through grit or sheer desperation, I find work again. This menial, backbreaking, the kind of thing I swore I'd never do. But it pays the bills, keeps the gnawing hunger in my gut at bay. The fiery anger has dulled, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. Years bleed into one another. One bleak evening, amidst the fluorescent glare of the grocery store, I see her. Jennifer, once radiant, now bears lines of stress. The spark in her eyes diminished. She's alone. For a split second, our gazes lock. Then we both turn away, strangers pretending this chance encounter never happened. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I think back to those first destructive moves, the evidence gathering, the ruthless lawyer. And despite the ruin I now inhabit, a flicker of grim satisfaction remains. No, I don't feel remorse. Betrayal of that magnitude doesn't deserve forgiveness. Maybe she got off relatively easy, maybe I'm the one paying the heavier price. Doesn't matter now. My evenings are a testament to solitude. No calls break the silence. No friendly faces waiting at the door. This is the life I built for myself, born from heartache and a thirst for vengeance that consumed me whole. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but in the barren wasteland of my existence, there's no satisfaction to be found. Only the bitter aftertaste of a victory that tastes a lot like defeat. Pen_Spark. I'm not a hero or even a victim anymore. I'm just a cautionary tale. A reminder that some battles, even when one leave nothing but scorched earth behind. My wife and I were married for 4.5 years. The first time my wife and I met was at a football stadium. I had gone out with a couple of friends to support my football team, and she was there with her family too. While the game was going on, she tried to take a picture, and since I was sitting a row from where she sat, she captured me in the image, and without caring if I was intruding or not, I smiled as she took the shots. Well, I'll say we became friends afterward because she was so lovely and polite, and after she saw me grinning from ear to ear in the pictures, she asked if she could send the pictures to me. It was hilarious because I thought she would be mad that I ruined her moments. Instead, we became friends. From there, we exchanged contacts and followed each other on Facebook. After the day we met, we didn't talk for a while. We started talking again after she sent a message on Facebook, and from there we started talking. It started as random questions, and gradually we moved to personal questions. I liked her personality. She was energetic and always fun to talk on the phone or chat with. So after weeks of talking and getting to know ourselves, I asked her out on a date, and she accepted. Our first date was so smooth, and it even led to other dates, subsequently leading to a relationship. I had fallen in love with her, and she made me feel like a baby again. I was heartbroken in my previous relationship and was too afraid to fall in love again, which was more reason I buried myself in work and tried to shut out any woman that came my way. But with my ex-wife, it was different. She made me feel safe and assured, and I loved her so much. My mind was at rest with her, and eventually we got married. My wife had always wanted a child, so we had one child in the first year of our marriage. She was already 2 months pregnant before we got married, and although I didn't want a child so fast, I agreed for us to have a child because of how excited she was. When our daughter came, I was so happy, and as much as I wasn't fond of babies or children, I loved how she lit up and how her presence pushed me to work harder and become a better father and husband. As my daughter grew older, she spent more time with me because I worked from home and had enough time to take her to her daycare and bring her back home. My wife was a nurse, so the only time she got to spend time with our daughter was either on her days off or when she was at home. Also, because I was the one who spent most of the time at home, I took care of the house, cleaned, did the laundry, and on some days I would cook. I did this because I wanted to ease the burden on my wife and loved a neat house. I also knew she was always exhausted every time she came home, and the possibility of her cleaning the house, going grocery shopping, and cooking with the little time she had to rest was almost impossible. So I did all I could to make life easier for us. We continued like this for the first 3 years of our marriage and were both happy. We barely had issues except for our normal couple fights, which never lasted a day. We were also great parents to our daughter and did everything possible to raise her well. Everything was great between us until the 4th year of our marriage. It all started with my wife not returning when she was supposed to. For example, if she worked the afternoon shift and was supposed to come home in the evening to be with us, she would not return until the following day and would claim she was covering up for a sick colleague or she decided to work overtime. In the beginning, I understood her reasons, but it got to a level I could not take it anymore. It was becoming more of a habit than an excuse, and it affected our relationship. Our daughter was beginning to miss her mother, and each time, I had to devise a dozen excuses for why her did not come home. Also, when all of this started, our intimacy reduced terribly. She no longer allowed me to touch her, and each time I tried to, she would either complain about being so tired or say she was not in the mood. These continued for weeks, and it even rolled into months. It got so bad that I became afraid for our marriage, and I signed us up for marriage counseling, but she didn't attend the appointment once. As time passed, our relationship deteriorated, and I had to open up to a close friend. He first suggested that my wife was either seeing someone or was tired of our marriage, and none of that made sense. I trusted my wife so much, and it never crossed my mind that she would cheat on me. To even show how much I trusted her, I argued with my friend that my wife couldn't cheat, and I believed she was only working so hard so we could give our daughter the kind of future she deserved. I also thought about the aspect of my wife being tired of our marriage, and I tried to talk to her about it, but every time I brought it up, her response would either be cold or she would sound so uninterested in the conversation. After trying so many times to make things right, the idea of my wife seeing someone else crossed my mind. Already in the previous months, there were many changes with her. Before, she used to go grocery shopping wearing simple clothes, but she became more conscious of how she looked and would even combine 2 to 3 perfumes just to go grocery shopping. I didn't think it was suspicious because I had always complained about how she dressed outside the house and the rest. She used to look homeless before, which was a major improvement on her end. It was something I complained about all the time, and I was glad she was finally listening. So one day, my wife was playing with our daughter in the living room, and I was in the kitchen trying to make dinner for us. I remember her phone ringing, and instead of taking the call in the living room like I expected her to, she rushed out of the house, and immediately, I knew something was wrong. In our 2 years of dating and 4+ years of marriage, my wife had never gone outside to take a call, no matter what the call was about. Out of curiosity, I left what I was doing and followed her. I didn't go out of the house, but I could hear most of her conversation because she left the door open, and before she returned, I hurried back to the kitchen. After she came back inside the house, she acted all cool, played with our daughter for a few minutes, and then turned to me to ask about the groceries we needed to replace. I mentioned the things and she made the list. After she was done, she told me she'd be going to get them at the grocery store since she wasn't doing anything at the moment. I didn't need a psychic to tell me something was off. Her body language said it all, and I watched her go into a room to shower, change, and wear light makeup for grocery shopping. We had not shared our husband and wife bond, or even communicated like we used to in months. But there she was, excited and all dressed for grocery shopping. As soon as she left, I asked my closest neighbor if his oldest daughter could help me watch after our daughter for a few minutes, and he agreed. It was such a relief, and without wasting time, I drove to the grocery store I knew she went to. On getting to the grocery store, I waited a bit, and just as I was about to step out of my car to confirm if she was genuinely shopping, I saw my wife walking out with a man from the grocery store. She had her hand around his waist, and his hands were crossed over her shoulder. It was already evening, and the whole store was lit up. I actually saw them from the see-through glass, and before they stepped out of the store, I already charged inside in anger. I was boiling, and to date, I could not believe I had acted that way. My wife was so shocked to see me that she did not know what to do or say. I didn't confront or talk to her because deep down, I knew we were done. Instead, I focused on her affair partner, yelled at him, and ensured I caused a scene. People gathered around to take videos and photographs, but I didn't mind. I was just so angry. In the end, his manager found out about his affair with my wife and he was fired. As for my wife, she came home that night to beg and cry, but no matter what she said, I was too disappointed to forgive her. She said she did it because she thought she would get away with it, and returned to me, which even hurt me more. That same night, I kicked her out of the house, and she crashed at her friend's place. She had been seeing him for more than 6 months, and I was completely unaware. That whole time, she was telling stories of how she covered for her friend at work, and blah blah. She was spending the night with him, while I looked after our daughter alone. There's no need to ask if we divorced or not because we did. I could not just forgive her or forget she cheated on me, while I was trying to be a good husband and father. Thankfully, I won custody of our daughter, mainly because she was never around in the first place, so it was better she stayed with me. It's been over a year, and I still have not gotten over the pain and hurt I felt. I was so disappointed, and I still am. Right now, my daughter is my top priority, and I will try my best to be a good father, and teach her to be faithful to whoever she ends up with. There are different levels to why women cheat, each with its own shockwave. I'm sorry you had to go through this, but you do not have to sulk forever. She should be sulking because it's her loss and not yours. I'm glad you won custody of your daughter, and I know you will be a great dad. You need to let go of the past and move on, but you must open up your heart first. I understand it can take time to heal though, so take all the time you need until you are ready again. I wish you all the best. Now let's get into the next story of the day. I was married to my wife for just a year when I found out about her affair. Before Sarah and I married, we were family friends, and our families knew one another. In fact, her mom was a very close friend of my mom, and somehow their relationship continued with us, their children. As a teenager, I had been crushing on Sarah for a while, but after she married her previous husband, what I had for her died down, and I moved on with my life. Unfortunately, 2 years after she was married, She divorced her husband because of his infidelity, and that's when we became close friends. Throughout the time she was dealing with her divorce, I was there to stand by and support her, and in the process we fell in love with each other and I asked her to be my girlfriend. According to her, she said I was nothing like her ex-husband, and she wished she had met me before she got married to him. Sincerely, I loved Sarah so much, and shortly after she was done with her divorce, I asked her to move in with me, being that I had known her for years and wanted us to live together. As of the time Sarah and I started dating, I was not in any relationship and I wanted to settle down too. I was tired of being alone, and as soon as I asked her to move in with me, she did. We didn't date for so long. We dated for 9 months, and after 9 months of waking up next to her every day, I believed it was time to make things official. We had a small wedding, invited friends and family, and everything was great. Marrying Sarah was like a dream come true, and I treated her with so much love. On her end, Sarah cared for me, cleaned the house, and did all the necessary chores. She was so sweet, and I loved coming home from work to be with her. Even after we married, we continued with our bi-monthly family gathering, where our parents and available siblings would come together at my parents' or her parents' house, and we would all eat together like a family. Life was great for us and we barely had any issues except when I forgot to take out the trash. After Sarah divorced her ex-husband, she told me she was no longer in contact with him, especially since they ended things on bad terms, and I believed her. I hadn't seen how much she had been hurt by him, and I knew it was difficult for her to leave someone she had dated for 4 years and were married for 3 years, and that's why I tried as much as possible to comfort her and encourage her during that time. We didn't have a child or thought about having one because Sarah didn't want children, and she preferred we either got a dog or bird whenever she was ready to become a parent, and I was cool with that. I didn't like kids anyways, and I was cool with us owning a pet sometime in the future. Even our parents tried to convince us by telling us all the beautiful things about having kids and why children were important, but we still did not let them get to us. Now that I write this, I'm grateful I didn't let my parents convince me, because I'd probably be raising another man's child. So it all happened that one day Sarah and I were in the living room watching a movie together on a Friday night like we always did, and then I realized I could not find my phone. Not like it was missing. I had this bad habit of dropping my phone in a place I would forget. At first, I searched the couch and the whole living room, but I could not find it, and she didn't bother helping me find it because it wasn't the first or second time it was happening that week. The worst part was that I loved to leave my phone on silent, so even if I called the number, I'd need to go from room to kitchen to bathroom to hear the vibration. After searching for a couple of minutes, and I was already frustrated, I asked for Sarah's phone so I could go around the house and listen for the vibration, and she gave it to me. It was a big distraction from the movie we were watching, and since it was a series we were anticipating, she was so engrossed that she didn't even notice when I left. I checked the kitchen, the laundry room, I did laundry just before we watched the movie, the bedroom, and eventually I found my phone in the bathroom. I left it there after I used the toilet. I was a bit relieved because I had a work meeting in less than 10 minutes, and just as I was about to leave our bedroom, a WhatsApp group chat notification popped on her screen. There was something weird with the chat name and all the sensual emojis attached to it. Out of curiosity, I opened the group chat to read the message, and at first glance I knew what was going on, but I was wondering what my wife was doing in a group like that. It wasn't until I read the messages that I realized that my wife had secretly been having an affair behind my back, and the most heartbreaking part was that she was cheating on me with her ex-husband and his girlfriend. They said all sorts of nasty things to one another in the group, and from all I gathered, they had been having threesomes. They even had one that week, and they were already making plans for the next and all the toys they wanted to use to spice things up. Honestly, I stood in shock for almost a minute and tried to wrap my head around what I had just seen. It was shocking to think that we both talked about her ex-husband that same day, and she cussed at him and wished him all the miserable things in the world. I knew I would have to read their messages over and over to be sure I wasn't making things up in my head, so I took screenshots of the messages I saw, took screenshots of her ex-husband and his lover's picture in case she tried to deny it, and I sent them to my number in WhatsApp. Then I marked her message as unread, and I cleared every trace. I could not even confront her because it was a lot to take in that night, and I couldn't sleep the whole night. My head nearly popped open. The following morning, she noticed I was a bit dull and cold toward her, but she believed I would cheer up once we met our family. We were gathering at her parents' house on the second Saturday of the month. When we got to her parents' house, I tried not to ruin the happy moment and waited until it was time for lunch. While we were eating, I asked her if she had seen her ex-husband recently, and the question surprised everyone. She answered with a smile and denied not seeing him since their divorce. My hands were already shaking at that point, and her parents noticed it. I couldn't control my anger anymore and yelled at her to explain the screenshots I saw on her phone. When she got my phone and read the messages, her mouth dropped, and she began to cry immediately. At the same time, I sent all the screenshots to our joint family group chat, and everyone was shocked. I wasn't the only one that was so disappointed. Her parents were so ashamed and disappointed that they yelled at her to explain what I was talking about, and she did nothing but cry. After I exposed her in front of her parents and my parents, I walked out of the house, and she tried to follow me. I left her there, and she did not return home that evening. The following day, I packed all of her stuff and drove it to her parents' house, and I left. She arrived at my house the following week and begged me to forgive her. She even created a small scene as I entered my car and drove out, and I didn't care. Eventually, we divorced, and she has been miserable since then. Also, her infidelity affected the relationship between our families somehow, and my mom is no longer close to her mother like they used to be. It's been 4 years, and I'm glad I didn't let her infidelity hold me back. I'm currently in a relationship with the woman I intend to marry, but we are taking things slow. As for Sarah, she found out her ex-husband was only using her for pleasure, and he didn't even marry his girlfriend. He dumped them both, and since then, she has not been in any relationship. Women can be so deceptive at times. To even think she made you think she hated her ex-husband when she was cheating on you. Be glad you learned the truth early, and I'm so happy you have found a better woman who will love and cherish you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Take care. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.